And it is Denver Sports Tonight on this Monday night in the Mile High City. He's James Merilatt. I'm Will Petersen. We will roll with you for the next hour on a bitterly disappointing day in Denver Broncos history. There is no other way to slice it. Russell Wilson doesn't even make it 2 calendar years as the quarterback of the Denver Broncos. He will be cut when the new league year starts on March 13th. The Broncos informed Russ of that today, released a co-statement from George Payton and Sean Payton. We'll get into that. That was weird. Russell Wilson thanks a lot of people on social media. It's done, James. The divorce, the breakup, Russ and the Broncos is complete. No doubt about it. No other way to slice it. A terrible day for the Denver Broncos.
Oh, without a doubt. The Broncos fans and the media members and the whoever else that seem to be celebrating this, like, thank goodness Russ is finally gone. They just don't get it, right? Like the fastest way, the most logical way for the Broncos to become relevant again, and by relevant I mean a playoff team, is for it to work out with Russ. They committed so much to it, right? The 7-asset trade, the $245 million contract extension, like they had to have it work out. It was the complete opposite of working out. Like it was an unmitigated disaster. Like it really could not have gone worse, save for Russ being hurt the entire time. But if he was hurt, he'd still be here because there'd be this hope of like, well, wait till he's healthy. It's just an absolute disaster. It puts his team in a terrible spot. They're taking on $85 million of dead cap, which is such an astronomical number. I mean, the previous record was $40 million. This is 85. They more than doubled the record. It's a bad day, Will, because it's hard. And listen, I try to be an optimist. I really do. It is hard to come up with a scenario in which this team finds a way to be competitive in 2024 and 2025. Tell me what it is. How is Sean Payton going to pull a rabbit out of his hat and make this team a 9, 10, 11-win team that is a playoff contender? I can't figure out how they do it with this move today.
Yeah, no, I can't either, and that means it will be a decade of losing seasons, a decade without the playoffs. We keep saying it's getting closer to a decade. Well, it is. If they get through 24 and 25 without the playoffs, then that will complete it. I want to go back to something you said at the start there, though, and I think it's the most interesting point of all of this. Whether you liked Russell Wilson or not, whether you're happy he's no longer your quarterback or not, you can't argue this is a good day for the Denver Broncos. This is an admission that George Payton made one of the worst trades, if not the worst trade in NFL history, and that George Payton gave out the worst contract in NFL history, and yet he is still your GM. So if you're a Broncos fan, whether you liked Russell Wilson or not, whether you wanted to see Russ come back or not, it's a bad day because it means your chief decision maker, who still has a job and gets to release statements about firing Russell Wilson today, by the way, made 2 of the worst moves in NFL history and set your franchise back at least 1, if not 2, probably 3 or 4 more years. The Broncos will not sniff the postseason, and we'll be sitting here doing this show in 2026 talking about the last time they made the playoffs was with Peyton Manning under center. That's why it's a bad day for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean, that part of it is just sort of laughable. And, is it the worst trade in NFL history? I don't know, but it's in the conversation. Is it the worst contract in NFL history? Well, it's in the conversation for worst contract in the history of professional sports. He never played a play, not a single play, of the 5-year, $245 million extension, of which, 160 of it was guaranteed? And he didn't play a single play. It's such a bad deal that they didn't need to do, and folks like Mike Evans and other people on the station who said it at the time were right. I was in the camp of, hey, get ahead of it because it's only going to get more expensive, because nobody saw this coming. Nobody did. It was less than 2 years ago that the trade was announced and Zach By was going crazy on the air. Listen, you could be a pessimist and not have seen that this was going to go down this way. If somebody would have said when that trade went down that Russell Wilson will be cut within 2 years, you would have been laughed out of the building. And the guy who made that decision is still here, and he's the one you're charging with rebuilding this? Oh, no, it's Sean Payton. Okay, and as I wrote today at denversports.com, Sean Payton can get up there and talk about how he's got it all figured out and he knows how to draft a quarterback and he knows how to evaluate these guys and he's smarter than everybody else. What's the proof of that, Sean? What's the proof? right? He got Drew Brees after 5 years in San Diego, made him better. He did make him better. He wasn't a Hall of Famer with the Chargers, and he turned into a Hall of Famer, but it was a fairly polished product. They never drafted anybody in New Orleans. I go at it all the time with CSU fans. It's good-natured back and forth. And when the Saints drafted Garrett Grayson in the third round in 2015, I had all the Rams fans telling me he was the heir apparent to Drew Brees. He never played a play. Never played a play in the NFL. So that's the guy that's going to develop him. That's the guy that's going to take whoever they pick at 12, or if they wait until day 2 to take a quarterback. And then reality sets in, right? Because now you start getting the Mike Kliss stories about, well, here's the options at quarterback. Enjoy it. Enjoy 2024, 2025. Enjoy this list of journeymen, all the people who are celebrating this, and, we got to get rid of Russ because he can't process fast enough. Enjoy it. And I wrote about this today. It's much more likely that Russell Wilson goes somewhere, Pittsburgh, Vegas, Atlanta, and has success than the Broncos draft somebody at 12 and have success this year. Much more likely that Russ makes them eat this and kind of rubs their nose in it.
Yeah, we'll get to those names in just a little bit. Mike Kliss and Ian Rappaport have both released a list of names that could be the next quarterback for the Broncos, including a, quote, leader in the clubhouse. But I want to start with the news that came down shortly after 2 o'clock today. The Broncos on social media, we've notified Russell Wilson that he will be released after the league year begins March 13th. A statement from GM George Payton and head coach Sean Payton. Couldn't even separate these statements. Apparently the guys can't form an independent thought. They got to talk together. Quote, we spoke with Russell Wilson today to inform him of his release after the start of the league year. On behalf of the Broncos, we thank Russell for his contributions and dedication to our team and community while wishing him the best as he continues his career. One more paragraph, quote, as we move forward, we are focused on building the strongest team possible for the 2024 season and beyond. We're excited to improve this offseason, and we'll have the flexibility to get better through the draft and free agency. That last sentence, to quote you, James, is balderdash, because you have no flexibility because you gave up all your draft picks for Russ and Sean, and you don't have any cap space because of Russ. So this statement, first of all, I hate that it's a joint statement. I think that's the most bizarre thing ever. Who's running the show over there? Why haven't we heard from Greg Penner in this statement? And second of all, that last sentence just isn't true. You don't have flexibility.
No.
So the Broncos not only bungled the whole Russ thing the last 2 years, they bungled his release, a fitting bow on top of all of it.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the joint release, people are going to hear that and think like, well, who cares? It's such a sign of dysfunction, right? Like, if you don't have one leader, you don't have any leaders. You just don't. Like, who's in charge? It's we all know, or at least we all think it's Sean Payton. Then just have it be Sean Payton. This just sort of facade they put up to try and make it look like George actually has some power too, and he didn't get stripped of all of it when they hired Sean. Is just so laughable. It reminds me of up at CU when Dan Hawkins was the coach, and the depth chart had co-starting quarterbacks because Cody had to be one, and I forget who the other guy was. And it's like, really? You can't start two guys at once at that position? Pick a guy. That's what this feels like. And then, yes, it's balderdash. They don't have any flexibility. Now, I will say this, Will. The one positive of this could be, and listen, I've been banging the drum and screaming from the mountaintops, this is a mistake, and I still think it's a mistake. But right now, they're going to eat a lot of dead cap in 24 and 25. They're going to eat a lot of cash in 24, and it's 2 years and they can move on. If they'd have stuck with him without renegotiating his contract, they would have paid him in 24, paid him in 25, and the dead cap would have extended into 26. So if you really don't think it had any chance of working out, okay, better to eat 85 over 2 than 107 over 3 or whatever the numbers were.
Rip the Band-Aid, so to speak.
Yeah, okay. I mean, you can sell me on that. That's not untrue, but I just don't believe that there's an option out there that is better than Russell Wilson. And you're paying him anyway this year, and you're eating the dead cap anyway in the next 2 years. So I've said all along, if you've got a plan for me of who's a better option, sign me up. If they could have walked from Russell Wilson for nothing, and they didn't have to pay him, and they didn't have dead cap, sign me up. I'm fine with that. I'm not that big of a Russ fan. But the fact that people just don't seem to understand what the team is taking on here, it's not just adios, Russ, don't let the door hit you in the you-know-what. That's not how this is. This team is going to be saddled with this for 2 years, and it's a terrible move, and it's a big, big mistake. And throughout 2024, we're going to see it on nearly a weekly basis.
Russell Wilson chimes in with, quote, "Over the last 2 years, you have welcomed my family and me with open arms and have embraced us as members of the Denver community. The city will always hold a special place in my heart. Our family grew here. We made countless memories and friendships and formed relationships that will last a lifetime." He wrote several more paragraphs thanking teammates, singled out Courtland Sutton, Garett Bolles, Brandon Johnson, Jerry Jeudy, Javonte Williams, Tim Patrick, Jaleel McLaughlin, and a couple of others. He also thanked a bunch of Denver staff and said, quote, "God's got me," and, quote, "he is excited for whatever is next." I thought Russ handled it really well today, James. I thought it was a classy statement from Russ. I thought pointing out the teammates is not only great, but heck, he was pointing out cafeteria staff. So I think Russell Wilson's statement was well said, well prepared, and it makes me feel like I felt when they benched Russ and threatened to bench him, 6 weeks before if he didn't redo the injury guarantee clause. I'm not a Russell Wilson fan of the quarterback, James. I am one of those Broncos fans that was done with it, was over it, was ready to try something different. But I am a fan of Russell Wilson, the person. And just like when all the news came out and Dan Orlovsky and Ryan Clark called the Broncos classless, all that, 2 months ago, I think once again today was a big win for Russell Wilson, the person, the PR firm, and a big loss for the Denver Broncos.
No, I think that's well said. He did handle it well. He handled himself well the whole time he was here. Wasn't perfect. There was the situation with his charity. He had some corny tweets, and, the "Let's Ride" was a misguided, forced catchphrase from the get-go. Like, I get it. I get why he kind of forces people to roll their eyes. But, Will, you and I have been doing this a long time. The people listening have been following sports a long time. There are bad guys in professional sports. Russell Wilson ain't one of them.
No.
He's just not. I think he's very easy to root for. I was pulling for him big time. I thought he was the guy that, had it worked, this is a team. This team had a chance if they surrounded him with the right things to become a contender and, at least make the Chiefs sweat a little bit in the AFC West. But yeah, he handled it really well, and that doesn't surprise me at all. And I think he learned something from year 1 to year 2 here in Denver. He came back in much better shape. He carried himself in a different way. He was much more humble. I think he'll take the lessons he learned in the 2 years in Denver, and wherever he lands next, they are going to get a very determined, very motivated quarterback, and I think he's going to have a lot of success. If you can take the money out of it, was it probably time for both sides to just move on and it's best for both sides? Yes. I wouldn't argue that. I wouldn't, especially since Sean is here, and clearly they don't get along, but it's not that simple because you can't just throw out the $85 million in dead cap. And it really does feel to me like the Broncos were willing to take this on just because of what was to me is much more of a personal issue than a football issue. Because you're telling me Jarrett Stidham's a better option? If they were sitting at number 1, Will, and it was Caleb Williams, and they were trying to make the decision that Chicago's making, I would get that. I mean, I'm not a fool. Yes, you move on, you take Caleb Williams, and you worry about the next 10 to 15 years. That's just not the situation here, and it's just it's back to the quarterback carousel. Break out the graphic. It's back on it, and here comes the next journeyman to lead this team to another losing season.
Yeah, you mentioned some of those names, the Stidham being the leader in the clubhouse. That's what Ian Rappaport said on NFL Network today. He also mentioned Jacoby Brissett and Sam Darnold. I mean, that's a good way to get dozens and dozens of people to sit on the hill next year. Mike Kliss was on 9 News, mentioned those same names, threw in Ryan Tannehill, who, of course, is a veteran at this point, who lost his job in Tennessee this year. I mean, James, I hope this is all a smokescreen and there's a big trade coming and we can turn the page quickly and say, you know what? They just traded up to 3 and got Drake May. And there's a reason to be excited because I'm going to go to camp and watch Drake May hopefully be here for the next decade, or even J.J. McCarthy. I don't think they're getting Williams or Daniels, but let's talk about May and McCarthy in that sort of actual realm of possibility. That I can get excited about. But, James, as the focus here today is on the news that the Broncos will cut Russell Wilson when the new league year starts on March 13th, if they truly think they can go into training camp with Jarrett Stidham, Sam Darnold, and Jacoby Brissett, and we're supposed to go out there and get excited, they are more arrogant and misguided than I thought.
Yeah, and look, Sean Payton's not the first offensive-minded head coach to think his system can win with anybody. I mean, we've seen it in this town. Mike Shanahan tried to defend back-to-back Super Bowl titles with Brian Griese instead of Bubby Brister, who went 4-0 the year before and was a big part of why the Broncos won their second consecutive Super Bowl. Gary Kubiak tried to defend a Super Bowl with Trevor Siemian, who had taken one NFL snap, and it was a kneel down. I mean,
but those dudes had earned that right, James. They had just thrown us parades. They had just hoisted Lombardis.
Sure.
Sean hasn't earned that right. Sean is losing record in his only season in Denver. So while I'm with you, I think Shanahan made a mistake. I think Kubiak made a mistake. At least we can all say they just won the Super Bowl. They get to do that. Sean Payton doesn't get to come in here, run Russell Wilson out of town, keep George Payton employed, and then say, hey, Broncos fans, I got Jarrett Stidham and Jacoby Brissett and Sam Darnold down at camp. Come on down. That's just a new level of arrogance, too. Sean Payton doesn't have the resume in Denver that Shanahan and Kubiak have. He may have it overall, but he does not have that kind of leash with Broncos Country.
Well, he doesn't have it overall, in my opinion, but that's another debate for another day. But here's the other thing.
Well, maybe with Gary Kubiak, but yes, I see your point.
When you start hearing the names of veterans, that leads me to believe they ain't drafting a quarterback at 12. Because if they're going to take J.J. McCarthy, let's just play that hypothetical. I'm not a believer in you have your quarterback sit. I think you put him out there and you play him. It's the C.J. Stroud approach, right? Like, just go. Just play. You can tell me Aaron Rodgers and, okay, fine, and Jordan Love. There's an example, an outlier example for anything you want to make a case for, but by and large, just go out there and play. If you're going to fail fast. If they were going to go that route, the logical route is Jarrett Stidham is the bridge, and you go with the rookie as soon as he's ready. Why do you have multiple veteran quarterbacks here if you're going to draft a guy? If you draft a guy, he's the future. Play him. So if they sign Sam Darnold or Jacoby Brissett come next week when free agency starts, that's a huge red flag and a 5-alarm fire for me that they ain't drafting a quarterback. They're not. And that may not be. They need some skill position guys. I mean, I look at it and say, hey, anybody they would draft and bring him in here, J.J. McCarthy, good luck. Good luck behind this offensive line and with a running back who averages 3 yards in a cloud of dust and the most overpaid, overhyped wide receiver room in the league and the least productive tight end room in the league. Good luck. Good luck to a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, no news is good news. No news may be good news next week if they don't sign a veteran quarterback. That could mean they are honing in more on the draft, which would certainly make you and I happy. You mentioned the dead money. Let's go through it a little bit here. Russell Wilson, an $85 million dead cap hit. That more than doubles the Matt Ryan hit with the Falcons of $40.525 million back in 2022. Aaron Rodgers, $40.313 million with the Packers. Tom Brady, $35.1 million with the Bucs, and Carson Wentz, $33.8 million with the Eagles. We are talking about some massive, massive hits from those 4 QBs, and yet George Payton's contract more than doubles that up for a guy who did not give you the production that Aaron Rodgers gave you in Green Bay or Tom Brady gave you in Tampa or Matt Ryan gave you in Atlanta. It's a list that makes it easier to swallow because all 3 of those guys had a ton of success. 2 of them won Lombardi trophies. One won an MVP and was up 28-3 in the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, Russell Wilson goes 11-19. It's an unfathomable number for the production he gave during his time in Denver. Again, a lot of it due to the circumstances of the hand he was dealt as well.
Well, your list there makes my point. So let's go through them one at a time. What was the number 1, Matt Ryan?
Well, he's now number 2, but okay. Yes, he was number 1, $40.525 million.
So when they decided to eat that, what was their plan in Atlanta? Who are they moving on to? They didn't have one, right? Who's next? Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, 40.313 in Green Bay.
Okay, what was the plan in Green Bay?
Jordan Love,
a guy we took in the first round a couple of years ago. We're ready to turn the page to him. That worked out pretty well. They had a plan. Who's 3?
Tom Brady, $35.1 million.
Okay, so they had 1 year where Mac Jones played okay, and then
no, this is with Tampa because he retired.
Oh, okay,
he retired, so it wasn't really their fault.
There's a team that they won the division, but what were they 8-9 this year?
And they kind of got lucky on Baker Mayfield. I mean,
sure.
Baker really revitalized his career down there.
But they don't have a plan. They didn't have a plan. They got lucky. So, okay, that one worked out. Broncos could do that. They don't have the kind of money to go probably get a Baker Mayfield this year, but what Baker was a year ago, maybe. And was there a fourth team on there?
Yeah, Carson Wentz with the Eagles, 33.82.
They had Jalen Hurts ready to move on to.
Eventually, yes, they found their next stud quarterback out in Philly.
So when you have a plan, you can do it. And when your plan is a young quarterback who's already on your roster that you know can play, you can do it. That's again, I'll just continue to reiterate it. I'm not anti-moving on from Russell Wilson if you have a plan. But your plan can't be Sam Darnold, Jacoby Brissett, and Jarrett Stidham. It just can't be, because you're going to turn into the Atlanta Falcons, who here they are still searching for a quarterback. They got a ton of skill position guys down there, and they can't win squat because their offense stinks and their head coach just got fired. It's clear as day. When you have somebody there and you know who you're moving on to, fine. It doesn't even have to be in the building. If they had a top 3 pick, Will, then fine. Okay, you're taking one of the guys. You're going to get Jaden Daniels, and we're moving on. Great. Okay, sign me up for that. But this is just a team that has no plan. If they're moving into rebuild mode, okay, then why is Sean Payton the head coach? Why did you not make some trades at the deadline? It's because they're just going wherever the wind is blowing them.
So this is why you write that the decision could age very badly. This is why that was your gut reaction this afternoon. You're absorbing this news in real time, just like Broncos Country, and I'm staring at it right now at denversports.com. The Russell Wilson decision could age very badly for the Broncos.
I think it's going to. I think in the next 2 or 3 years, it is much more likely that Russell Wilson has success with his new team than the Broncos find a gem and a franchise quarterback at number 12. Because they don't have anything to surround him with, so he's setting him up. They're setting him up for failure to begin with, just like they did Russ to some extent this year. I just think if you were a betting person and they were taking odds on this of who's going to win more games in the next 3 years, Russell Wilson or the Broncos?
Depends on where he lands, but if he lands with Mike Tomlin, it's pretty darn tempting to take the Steelers. That's
my point. And if that's the case, it's going to age poorly. So when we're on here doing this show on Halloween, and the Steelers are 7-2, and the Broncos are 2-7, and they've now moved on to Jacoby because Jarrett didn't get it done. Is everybody going to be telling me what a genius Payton and Payton are?
Man, if anyone's take walking away from today is that Payton and Payton are geniuses, then I'll take whatever they're having, because that's an asinine take. To call either of those men geniuses is just, that blows my mind. I'd be shocked if that's a take that's prevalent for more than a handful of people.
Well, I'm getting a lot of, hey, I'll take Sean Payton's football knowledge and quarterback knowledge over yours. Okay, fine. But we've both developed as many rookie quarterbacks. We've both developed 0.
All righty. I think we'll leave it there. Hey, if you could help us grow our Denver Sports YouTube channel by liking, commenting, sharing, and most importantly, subscribing, maybe hit that notification bell so you never miss a video, we would appreciate it. Find us on YouTube at Denver Sports. All right.